Ladies and gentlemen, we're in for a real treat today here on Sportswire Radio because it's not too often that we get a lady's perspective when it comes to the world of wrestling, but we've got a good one of my favorites here because she has done a lot of great things in the ring and even now in the ring now in a role that's kind of her main role at the moment because she is the ring announcer for XCW Shelbyville, of course, one of our favorite companies around. We do a lot of coverage here for XCW. We've seen a lot that has gone on in XCW that I want to ask her about it because, well, she's kind of up close in all things related to XCW. No, by the way, she's even done some things in XCW like win a championship, the first woman to ever won a championship in XCW. She's one of the best in the business. She's got one of the best pipes in the business. I'm going to have a lot of pressure here giving her this introduction because she does this every time we see XCW shows. So we're delayed here on Sportswire Radio, so I'm going to make up for it here. So she needs no further introduction, but because it's her first time here, she's going to get that introduction that everybody else has gotten. So deal with it. So with that, without further ado here on the Sports Report, number one global sports show, the ring announcer for XCW Shelbyville, Trinity. How you doing there, Trinity?
Really, really good. Kind of caught me at a transition of where I'm currently living to Lafayette. So yeah, I'm kind of like mobile right now, so I'm just stopped for this interview.
I appreciate it. And I apologize, by the way, that I'm behind. I had a good reason for it, actually, because shout out to actually my neighbor who kind of softened me up and said, well, I actually listened to your shows. I actually watched them when you post the clips on Facebook. So thank you to my friend Nino, because his air conditioner actually was going to break, and I actually had to help him because I was the only person around. Go figure. But I tried to make up for it. But obviously, Trinity, it is a tremendous honor to have you here on Sportswire Radio. And for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, what is it like to be one of the only female ring announcers around, I would dare say, in this sport, and one of the best? So what's that like? Because you've made this transition now from in-ring competition to in-ring announcing.
It's a lot of fun. I mean, in XCW, I started out as the ring announcer, and then I kind of had like a small sabbatical to take care of some stuff, came back, got involved, a little too involved, but after a while, after people came and went, I got back into it. I get to be a hype man for everyone, whether if I like them or not.
Well, what is that like? I mean, because obviously some of these people you've wrestled against, some of these people in a different way, but you're almost kind of like an unbiased observer, but you're there still. I mean, is that a mental adjustment? Because I find that so fascinating, because you're one of the few people I know that's actually made a transition from actually going in ring, but still staying in ring, but actually doing it from an announcing standpoint.
It's not like, maybe for the first couple of shows it was a hard transition. But like after a while, it's just like a pair of Nikes that you slip on. They fit. You could still run in them. They're not completely worn down. So it's like, if the shoe fits and still works, I'll still wear it.
I always ask this question because sometimes I get broadcasters on, I get different people on, and you have these shows that XCW runs, and they're hours and hours, and they're basically premium shows. And obviously, we'll see another one coming up here later this week, and I'm sure I'll talk to you about some of the current stuff in XCW. But how do you keep your voice kind of hydrated and able to go where you don't have these problems? Because I do this, maybe once a day, once every other day, and I do the long intro. But you have to do these introductions several times over the course of a few hours in a given show. So how do you kind of prepare and keep yourself from not having that moment of any voice issues? I'm so fascinated about that.
Well, the good thing about the area in which we are in is it's readily accessible to beverages. And I have like a tiny cooler that I keep. If anybody had seen me off camera, they seen like a little red cooler. I buy like teas, waters, and I keep myself hydrated.
Okay.
And it's the one thing that I do to keep myself from like, having a voice crack and being like, well, I'm done.
Because it's funny you said that, because today we were watching a show in the UK called GT Ministries, and their wrestler, their new champion Bentley, he gets the mic and he says, well, I've lost my voice. And he didn't even really speak throughout the show, and he lost his voice because the crowd was so loud. But I'm so always fascinated when we have people like yourself who do these great introductions, by the way. And I'm always fascinated because I'm the knucklehead that always drinks soda. And they always say the last thing you want to drink is soda, but that's always me because, well, I'm me, but you're Trinity. You do a lot of great things, and I want everybody to follow XCW and watch XCW shows on YouTube, especially at XCW Shelbyville. Over 1,250 subscribers now on the XCW Shelbyville YouTube page. Also, you can check them out on Facebook, as well as Trinity is a huge part of these great things. So, I mean, I have to ask you, and I'll come back to some of this stuff in what you do in the ring now, but recently you announced your retirement in about a month or so ago. And for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio, talk about what led you to the decision of, for now, retiring from in-ring competition.
I'm getting older, and I'm not as well conditioned. Like, to be honest, I didn't really start doing the physical stuff until I was probably maybe, I'd say about 33 years old. Like, I had some physical experience with like combat because I did martial arts for a few years.
I think Fletch spoke about that, I think, either off the air or even in the interview, that you had like a real background in fighting. I mean, I look at you, Trinity, and you definitely could kick my butt and a lot of the guys, but you have done an XCW's butt. So I could certainly see, that you have that experience for sure.
It's helped me keep up with the boys, because I'll be perfectly honest, I am absolute shit when it comes to wrestling.
Okay.
But the combat experience kind of helps me, like I know how to bump. I can take a punch, and I know how to kick. I love doing Thai kicks. Like, Thai kicks are some of my favorites.
I've seen those. I've definitely seen you in the ring a little bit, sure.
It's just, if I maybe started when I was in my 20s, like maybe my early to mid 20s, and had kept better conditioning, I would probably say that 40 might have been the last year. But, my health isn't as well as it should be. So, yeah, that pre-show for Summer Mania match, for now, that's my last match.
Do you have regrets then in the fact that, you would have loved to have certainly competed more, but, different reasons it didn't? Do you have regrets in terms of maybe how your career for now at the moment is kind of finished, as it seems?
I would say a mix of like yes and no. Yes, in the sense that I feel like there's some unresolved storylines and some unresolved matches that I felt needed a finish. But when it comes to stuff like, what happened between Deacon and I with Brady, that was over and done with. The stuff between Blackheart and I, like,
well, I think that's what you're going to be known for most. That whole storyline, that was, so in depth. It was almost like, I guess it really did blur the line. I mean, I don't even know if we've seen sort of, Matt Hardy, leader and Edge, kind of was that way. I mean, we've seen it where things have transpired from, I guess, real life to in the ring. But that was so, I think, for XCW history's one of the most in-depth storylines that I think we'll ever see.
There, and it's funny you mentioned that, Reverend. On my Facebook page, like especially with the stuff that happened between Blackheart and Hayden Vex, one of the people who likes my page was like comparing that particular storyline and the back and forth that I had with Blackheart in the like, I don't like the text or whatever.
Yep.
Comparing it to like NXT, like when NXT was in its prime. So it's like, yeah, I could see how that could like blur some lines, because sometimes it's like, okay, is this a work or is this a shoot? Like, what's going on here?
Well, yeah, because if you think about even like at this level, now I do a lot of stuff in the British independents. I do some stuff in the pros, to an extent. Vito Fratelli's a good friend of mine who just made the PWI 500. But I'm even thinking at this level for the, let's say, YouTube underground type. I don't consider you guys yarders. I consider you guys certainly above that. I don't know if I've encountered, at least in my coverage on Sportswire, that type of storyline. So, I mean, it was very unique. I mean, it was certainly, maybe it was ahead of its time in a lot of ways, if you think about it. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen in every storyline, or, because you obviously had a personal situation that turned into the ring and you didn't know what was going to be. I mean, it was really, to me, ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
I mean, I could see you saying that as far as that goes. And I think with like most underground, or even in this case, most backyard wrestling companies, they tend to just focus on the fighting.
Absolutely.
Like two guys with like overinflated egos beating the hell out of each other, or just, two friends who want to be at the top and they realize that it gets really crowded at the bottom and there's got to be one person on top. Would I say that was the only instance of maybe like some personal stuff coming into a storyline? No, there have been other stuff in XCW before. And I would say probably here within the next few months, watch a couple of the episodes of Sometime Later for series 3 that'll come out, and even some of the stuff prior, and you'll find out that there's some real things that might have happened or did happen that kind of got turned into a storyline.
Well, let's obviously save that. We'll certainly save that for down the road, and I'm sure that we'll talk to you about it undoubtedly, and I'll come back to Blackheart. But there was something you said, I guess, a while back after everything that took place, and I was curious what your thoughts were and what you've learned from that. You've actually done some editing with XCW. You had mentioned that, and I was curious, and I guess maybe that storyline in a way led you into that also role that you've maybe had, and maybe talk about that experience and maybe how that's shaped what you do, or inside the ring or outside the ring. I think that's also another interesting thing that you're a part of in XCW.
Well, at the time that everything had went down, there was some things going on in Blackheart's life that was kind of affecting his editing. Like, I think if I was to understand correctly, we were, I think, like 2 months behind on shows, and the guys get mad because and I'm not just talking about Fletch. Fletch gets really mad because he's all about consistency.
Yes, Fletch. I've gotten to know Fletch these last few months, and I could see Fletch is definitely reminds me of an old music teacher I had. Very by the book, very much like routine repetition. So I get it. I totally get that.
And it was around that time that, like, at first I wanted to be petty and be like, well, if Blackheart can do like a documentary like Showtime, why don't I just do something that just focuses on one wrestler? And I do, and I did like 6 minutes of stuff in my room on the computer, which you could tell with that first episode, I'm not on camera. Like, I'm not, like, the narration is all audio. And I present it to Fletch, and Fletch is like, can you do more of these? And I'm like, yeah. And then he's like, hey, so can you edit the shows? Like, can you do a lot of that? And I'm like, I could try. Aside from like the animated stuff that Blackheart is really good at, not a lot of people could tell the difference between like his style and my style. They were pretty identical. And it was, I think, after we had gotten 2 shows out, and one of the wrestlers knew that I did it. Is we have kind of like a little courtroom chat where we
Okay.
all talk and discuss things. And like they were just saying, it's like, wow, well, I'm glad Blackheart finally caught up on stuff. And this guy just was like, oh, by the way, Trinity, thanks for getting us caught up. And they're like, she's doing all that? And they're like messaging me like, yo, are you for real doing the editing? And I'm like, yeah, for now. And I did it for a while, and my computer started to kind of like crap out because Fletch likes to upgrade, which
Yeah,
don't get me
Fletch was
wrong.
talking to me, I think, a few weeks ago about the
Yeah.
fact that he was like he needs more storage and it was space issues. So I could imagine. I mean, I've had some issues. I'm doing this 5 years, and I have the radio station, which ironically Fletch and I guess ACT, whatever you might want to call his real name, actually do the show that they do Sunday nights, and we're playing it here on sportnarium.com/permanent radio station. He was telling me, yeah, we I have issues all the time, and I have to try to get more space. So I could imagine when you're doing all this stuff and the amount of content that you have, it's an issue.
It is. And like after a while, and when Blackheart and I, we kind of made amends, and he was getting his life fixed and situated. Um, and I just kind of told Fletch, hey, I'm having a hard time keeping up because of my computer stuff, so I need to figure out what to do. And he's like, well, what are we gonna do about the shows? And I'm like, Blackheart said he could do it again, and I had to go to bat for him
Wow, which
because
is I'm sure awkward in itself. That again, we spoke very briefly about the whole situation you had on screen. Then here you are, you guys, your paths always seem to be intertwined. I mean, that had to have been awkward.
to an extent, yes, but if 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 you do something well enough and you have a moment of weakness and you have to step away and you're willing to come back and you're willing to do it, yeah, come back and do it. I vouched for him. And there was like maybe one other time when I had to step in and edit, but it was so that he could fix his tech. And then when his tech was fixed, I gave it all right back to him. So I'm kind of like a backup editor in case something happens with his stuff.
Interesting, because I've heard there are a lot of XCW editors here. And speaking of people that are tuned in, I want to say hello to them. Again, I apologize for the delay here. Things do arise, and that is Mr. Daniel Banner, the cosplay kid. He was at a comic convention out there in the UK. He says he's tired. It's about 11 o'clock there in the UK. He says hello. He's training for GT Ministries and their company, so he took a break from that and wanted to say hello to us. And obviously, you've also been doing editing, and we certainly appreciate that. I heard Mr. Law, when he came on the show, talk about that experiences, and obviously you've spoken about it. And XCW has such a big team in the editing department. I find that so fascinating. You guys have so many editors, and we see all these shows, right? Save Yourself is coming up Thursday, and we see Summer Mania 18, again, a historic show, really one of the best shows the company's ever put on. But yet these shows aren't built in a day. I mean, you guys have so many people working on these shows. It's almost like you guys are like a war room almost, and like trying to get this show and that match together and that angle and that angle. I mean, that's got to be fascinating in itself to like learn that experience of like behind the scenes and how we see these shows like me on YouTube.
It takes it. I would say if you're multi-talented and you're able to contribute more than just like, let's say, you getting the hell beaten out of you, it definitely kind of catches Fletch's ear, because he's all about wanting to put content out there, and the more help the better. And like there's people who know how to use the cameras. I don't know how to
Sure.
use the cameras, and I could get trained on it, but I'd rather just do the announcing thing, and then go sit down and watch the match.
Well, I think you do a really good job, by the way, doing the ring introductions, by the way. I just want to point that out. You do a phenomenal job. So I don't think you need to be by the camera, Trinity. I think doing the ring introductions is very good. I always watch you there, and I watch the poise, and I kind of watch you with your voice. It's almost like you've got a weapon there with that voice. So stay doing what you do now. I don't think you need to do anything else.
I'm flattered, Tom. Thank you.
We definitely appreciate that. Daniel wants to say, I'm mostly creating the story of Daniel Banner and his origin, where his territory is, including the comic conventions. Great stuff here. But I do want to ask you that recently, your 3-year anniversary of XCW took place also. So what has that meant to you now to be a part of XCW for over 3 years? It's a big step in a company that's had a history and a legacy that it has. So talk to me about that.
I would say that as each year has come and gone, there has been improvements. Now, there's been struggles. I'm not going to lie. And sometimes, I clash with some of the boys in the back, but like over time, Fletch kind of made us all realize, like, hey, we're a family. We need to, get our shit together. The first year, I was on cloud 9, and I'm just like, wow. Like, this is much bigger than I anticipated. And then the second year, it's like, okay, I'm in my dark age, I guess, with Deacon and doing all of
the
that.
ACT war. I mean, that war with ACT took over the Facebook page, said all those things about you. Then it goes into the ring. You were the first person to have made him submit. And, that was just, then you become a manager again. That was just like, again, some really in-depth work that you were a part of, Trinity.
Well, I would have to, and I'd have to correct you. It's actually Blackheart that made him tap first.
Right, fair enough.
Yeah, but no, the second year, like when Blackheart actually won the XCW championship, that was actually the hardest Summer Mania. Like, it was hot, everyone was miserable, people weren't wanting to cheer, but we were still engaged and watching it. And I'm just there, sitting there, and I can remember it was a match between Corey Lee and Brendan Stickle.
Okay.
And Corey, he didn't like how I announced. Like, he wanted me to wait until they were both in the ring, which I had no knowledge of. I just do what I'm told. And he got in my face. And there's like a camera angle that nobody sees. And he's just like literally in my face, just doing this. And he says something very inappropriate. And it had to do with Deacon.
Don't tell me. Don't tell me.
I'm not. I'm actually trying to keep this as PG-13 as possible.
Appreciate that.
After he gets done saying that, and it's like, I'm hot, I'm miserable, I've got sunscreen in my eye, I slapped the hell out of him in front of everyone.
Wow.
And I knew he was trying to get a rise out of me to get the audience to hate him because he was a heel.
Right.
And I was mad. Like, I was legit mad. Like, after the show or after that match, Blackheart came up to me and he's like, "You all right?" And I'm like, "Nah, dude, I'm not good." And then Brendan, his opponent, came up and he's like, "What did he say?" And I told him what he said, and he's like, "You should have slapped him harder, girl," and walked the other way. And like, I was trying to play it off as like, yeah, I did get sunscreen in my eye, and that's the reason why I'm tearing up, instead of like, oh, this is bullshit. Why did he have to come after me like that? Like, oh no. But it is what it is.
Does that happen a lot, though? Does that happen a lot where you're doing a ring introduction and a wrestler doesn't like how their name was announced? I'm just curious, just hearing that. Does that happen at all?
Sometimes, I will say the one wrestler who I guess gave me a lot of grief when I started was his name. Well, I'm not going to mention his name, but
don't mention names at this point because it'll come to Sportswire. I just know it. I know somebody will message me at this point, so don't say the person's name.
I'm not going to say the name, but the guy was rather egotistical and got mad that I announced him over 1 pound.
Oh.
Over 1 pound. And I'm just like, I was told your weight was this.
Wow. You know what? I didn't even know people like measured themselves to that level. I mean, obviously, that's I guess bizarre. I mean, that is certainly a bizarre situation. I mean, I certainly hope that it doesn't happen too often, but we are here right now with Trinity Parker. And Trinity is one of my favorites on XCW because anytime you watch XCW TV, it's Trinity who usually introduces who's coming to the ring and who wrestles and who does what. And she is doing a phenomenal job for XCW. And I want people to follow XCW again on Facebook, YouTube, XCW Shelbyville. They've got some great content. Animosity was the most recent show. We've got SummerMania 18 on there. They got all those great recall shows, the rundown shows. ACT hosted. Oh, by the way, ACT is on the right side of things right now. So ACT is cool. A couple years ago, not so cool, but he's obviously doing a great job now. Also, we have some other huge shows coming. Save Yourself is this Thursday. So many great shows. At High Stakes took place a few weeks ago. You can watch all of that. And I made it very easy this time, right on the ticker for you. XCW Shelbyville. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryce, the man behind Sportswire Radio. And if you're here on Sportswire Radio, you want to watch us anytime, you can do that very simple because I've made it easy. Again, on the ticker. We're on youtube.com/Sportswire Radio 6579 space streams. I'm also on Instagram at the Sports Report 2021, Facebook at Sportswire Radio. And again, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You can listen to all of our great content on sportnarium.com/player, including Fletch and ACT show where they talk about all the latest happenings in the world of professional wrestling. You can catch it here. Also, I hear from a birdie, Justin Parsley has a show he's co-hosting with Jeremy Crafton, who just celebrated a birthday. The birthday boy called the Protect Life podcast. They're supposed to be heading on over to sportnarium.com/player and many other shows ahead. So you can check all that great content here. And also, I'll be back tomorrow night, 9 o'clock Eastern time, with a company that has done some work a little bit with XCW called ROEW. We are going to be with the ROEW champion of the world, the wild card Jason Storm, and he'll talk about their historic show Meltdown that just took place today. And we're going to talk about that plus much more with the wild card Jason Storm. He's got a lot to say. It's been a while since he's been on here on Sportswire Radio. We're going to have him on here 9 p.m. Eastern time. Follow ROEW and all of their great platforms, including YouTube and Instagram at ROEW Backyard Wrestling. But for now, we are here with Trinity Parker, who does a phenomenal job as an in-ring competitor in the past, but now is the main person who does ring introductions for XCW Shelbyville. Now, Trinity, I have to ask you, because I said a mouthful there, but speaking of things that are a mouthful, I have to ask you, I know you can't be too partial, but in the current storylines of XCW, it seems like an old company has come back into fruition. And it seems like they're on the verge of basically running XCW, and that is EBW. And just what a shock that EBW, I mean, Miano Diaz now is the EBW champion. I mean, you mentioned obviously Brady Branson. He's the world champion now in XCW. I mean, XCW right now seems like they're under siege again. Fletch, I mean, we saw what happened to Fletch at High Stakes. I mean, Fletch, who knows what happens to him? I mean, I have to ask you, I mean, is XCW on the verge of a meltdown right now?
You know, that's a really good question, Tom. I have no clue, but the men who are now involved with EBW are men who I really would not trifle with.
Oh, no. Chris Jones is back. I mean, who would have guessed Chris Jones, what he did? I mean, Mr. Branson, Miano Diaz, who saw that one coming? I mean, this right now, this group, EBW, I mean, tread very lightly, like you said.
Indeed, I mean, for people who didn't see the 2013 to 2014 like XCW run, EBW did invade back then, and for a while they were building up steam. They had really talented young people on their roster, and it actually took a winner take all match with Corey Lee and Chris Jones to settle everything. And I mean, now it's like Corey Lee's, he's practically of the sound and mind of, you know, I don't care about them.
Yeah, he said basically, I'm not XCW, I'm not EBW, I'm mad that I lost my championship. And I mean, he, and understandably so, is in a foul mood. I mean, so Corey Lee, I mean, I don't know if he's the savior. I mean, he certainly said he's got no allies at this point, so you got to cross him off the list. I mean, and then we got this whole James Cerebral situation. I mean, the guy that was hyping up EBW and promoting EBW more than anybody, but now we're not sure if he's EBW. I mean, that's to me the biggest question coming up here at Save Yourself and what happens here down the road in XCW. I'd have to think.
I mean, it would be a shame if XCW had lost everything. And a part of me does kind of wonder, like, what's going to happen if XCW changes? Is it going to be a more violent place? Is it going to be, is it going to, I kind of almost relate it to...
Are we going back to the old name, Extreme Championship?
Yeah.
Another Explosive? I mean, are we almost going back in time?
It just, I can only hope that there's a number of individuals on the XCW roster that can actually stand up to EBW, because right now there's so many different conflicting personalities, and I feel like if they lose sight of what the real problem is, EBW could take us out.
Are you saying then, Trinity Parker, are you saying potentially on future Sportswire radio shows, instead of me seeing XCW Shelbyville, could I actually be speaking to maybe EBW and go on YouTube and Facebook at EBW? Is that what you're telling us here on Sportswire? Could we be seeing the final days of XCW if guys on the roster don't step up?
I'm not going to say yes, but I'm not going to say no. You just got to tune in. Because I'm literally, I am kept in the dark about a lot of stuff.
I would imagine, when I realize you can't necessarily be one side or the other, but I have to ask that question before I get to a comment. I mean, maybe I could be talking to, again, instead of XCW Shelbyville, follow at EBW. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, Chris Jones looks like the mood he's in. We spoke about the world champion, Brady Branson, and Miano Diaz. That's the one I think nobody saw coming. Who saw that one?
That broke my heart.
I think a lot of people did. That was tough to swallow. If you're an XCW fan, that was a tough one to swallow.
Like, the moment I saw him turn around and they were, like, crowding Patrick, and I'm just like, oh, sweet baby, no. And I was just like, oh, damn it. Man.
But he's the EBW champion now. I mean, he went from, who would have guessed that? He's big time now. He just defeated Corey Lee and Animosity. I mean, Miano Diaz now, he's a top guy. I mean, maybe the jump to EBW has really skyrocketed and jump-started the career, and that he was floundering basically in XCW for what that's worth.
I wouldn't say that he was floundering in XCW. It's the man, he's young and he's talented. And, you know, when you put a young, talented rookie with a veteran who's like a somewhat larger guy, you have an average wrestler.
Agreed.
In my opinion. And I mean, Pat's been there for years.
Yep.
So, I mean, if they had found a way to amicably split and go their separate ways, that would have been great. But, you know, maybe the hand that was offering him better feed was more to his liking. But if Miano ends up biting that hand that's feeding him and tries to come back to XCW, he might not get as good of a portion to start off with. But
I don't know if he's coming to XCW back anytime soon. I mean, I would say he's not coming back.
Oh, it'll take time. I'm sure. But for now, like I said, I don't know.
No, nobody knows here. But, you know, speaking of people that maybe could help out, as crazy as this sounds for XCW, we actually have somebody here that's commenting, and somebody I mentioned very briefly, a man that had defeated Fletch at SummerMania 18. And this may not be so crazy as it seems, but do you think maybe, the first real wrestler himself, Mr. Justin Parsley's himself, Could he be somebody maybe we see and even things out and help out? He's got a history, especially with a Chris Jones, more than anybody out there. And, he's got a history of Mr. Lee. Certainly, maybe he could influence Mr. Lee. He's actually cousins with him. I mean, would you say a Justin Parsley is somebody that maybe could help even the odds for XCW as its future could be in stake, as you have pointed out for us?
I would love to think that Justin would be flying the XCW flag. But the problem is right now Justin has DJ on his ass, and as someone who's had to deal with DJ Wolbert myself, he's not easy to get rid of.
Fair play. Certainly had to throw out there. Could there be solutions? Could there be things? So, I mean, do we obviously expect help? I mean, ACT is now fighting the good fight. I mean, I'll have to throw a name out there. I would think Jay Ellis would be a name. Very popular, always does things the right way. Maybe it's a Jay Ellis. I mean, or maybe even I'll throw it out there. As crazy as it sounds, the decision that James Cerebral makes, I think that's going to be the most interesting decision right now in XCW and EBW. Where does James Cerebral go?
My hope is that he realizes that XCW is his home. It's like, I know he's old school EBW. He was Chris Jones's right hand man. Like, they were running men, but I would like to think in my heart of hearts that James Cerebral is going to be XCW. But then again, we'll never know. We'll never know until the time comes.
We're going to certainly find out. Obviously, we'll certainly see. But EBW right now looks like they're going to be running Roughshot. And again, Thursday, we're going to see more of Save Yourself. And that'll premiere, as it always does, all XCW shows, 6 o'clock Eastern time. So make sure you be there and be square. While you're at it, watch Animosity, because Animosity had some great shows. It was a nice little quick show, but I promise you, it's going to worth it. Speaking of things, and I realize I only have so much time with you, but you've actually held some gold, and this was important to note out because you were the first women's wrestler in company history to have won gold, got a championship shot, and I thought it was important for those that are listening and watching on Sportswire Radio. What that mean to you, Trinity, to become the XCW United States champion?
It was a shock to the system. It actually took 5 days for it to kind of settle in that I was a champion. It just, wow. The situation itself was sorted. And of course, the aftermath of me retiring that belt and giving my client Deacon what he wanted, which he always wanted, that international title, like, it kind of stung. But, contractual obligations to the client, it's like, you kind of saved my ass a couple of months ago. I did what I needed to do. So here you go. Was he happy I pinned him? No. But, I mean, it led to at least a compelling finish to that little three-way beef between myself, Deacon, and Brady.
Did you kind of, when the moment happened, maybe it took a lot to kind of digest for those days because you knew it was a big moment, not just in XCW history, but maybe even in, I would kind of say at this level, underground YouTube semi-pro history, where again, you were a woman holding a major championship in one of, really, to me, the most respected companies, I would say, around. Is that maybe why it took you so long to process the moment?
Not really. I'm sure there are other companies where women are championed, like actual active competitive female wrestlers. I think it was just the whole, I was processing everything, because going into that match, I didn't know what was going to happen. I knew I was going to get my ass torn up. I knew that. And I will say, after a couple of days, I was hurting. Like, it was probably the worst pain that I had ever felt. And even when I won and I was just sitting in the back trying to decompress, and like, if you watch the Showtime of when that happened. Like, I'm literally like trying to put into words and just answer, like, Blackheart's
Sure.
questions, and I'm just sitting there like, what?
I could certainly see that. I mean, and before I get to Justin, I'll bring Justin back on in a second with a comment. But in terms of your career in XCW, is that the moment as an in-ring competitor you remember most as winning that championship, or what's your thoughts on that?
It is one of, I would guess, the top 5. That would actually be at the top. Only because of the fact that when I started in XCW, I just thought I was going to be ring announcing. When I did the thing with Blackheart's, like, okay, that's done. And then being told that I'm going to be in a title match and that it's a triple threat, and it's like, well, I know I'm not going to win this, and it's like, okay, I just won this. Like, this is my top 5, and I'm probably never going to experience that again.
Interesting. And Justin wants to say right off the bat, what would Justin do? Choose XCW. So I guess there you have it. Justin Parsley. You can follow him on all his social media pages at Parsley's on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter at Parsley's. He says he's choosing XCW. So he doesn't have to think about it like James Cerebral. He's pretty much doing it here. And you also did some managing also throughout your career. What was, that experience like compared to the others? You've had such a fascinating career. If I think about it, you've wrestled, you've done the ring introductions, you've done some work backstage, and you've done some managing. So walk me through that experience.
Well, at the time that I started managing, it was back in XAWA, which I'll be brief because I'm XCW. They wanted to find a way to get me on camera because most of the time I was running camera or I was taking pictures.
Oh, okay.
And I had came up with the character of Trinity Parker, which, yeah, XAWA did a lot of supernatural shit.
Well,
Which
I have said before, by the way, I have to bring this up with Fletch. You reminded me so much of, like, there's a wrestler in the UK who, by the way, just lost the GT Ministries Championship to Bentley called Rarebit. And it's almost like he morphs into this character as like a monster. When he puts like the mask on, he all of a sudden unleashes all this venom, all this fury. It almost, to me, when I've watched you in the ring in XCW, you remind me of like Rarebit in a way. You just once you like morph in to like Trinity, it's like, that's it. Okay, that's it. It's over.
Well, when I did start out as a managing character, I managed Deacon, and I wanted to play it off as a, I'm willing to help, but you got to help yourself. And yeah, it's backyard. A lot of the guys are wearing jeans and like, shirts
Shoes, yeah.
wrestling.
Yeah.
And here I am, like, coming in with like these nice dress shirts and slacks. And, it's like over time did the thing. Then Mint Dragon gets introduced, and that's how I started to wrestle. So eventually Trinity was just going to kind of be in the background. The next AWA fell through, and XCW, had some of the guys transition over, like Blackheart and Deacon and Hayden Vex, who used to go by Nightmare in XAWA. And it's like, well, I kind of want to be a part of it, but I don't want to wrestle. And Fletcher's like, well, we could use a ring announcer. And I'm like, okay. And I can't remember if he was okay with it, but I'm like, can I just use the Trinity Parker name? But it stuck. And then after everything that happened with, the breakup with Blackheart, I couldn't go back to ring announcing because Jamin, who was the male ring announcer, was doing it. So Fletch is like, you're going to manage Deacon. And I made it perfectly clear Deacon never needed me when I was in XCW with him, but he chose me. And it led to some really compelling stories.
Yeah, you've been in some interesting stories throughout your, I guess, relatively speaking, compared to company's history, a short time. I mean, so you've actually been in some of these more interesting and compelling storylines. And in the ring, you've also had some big wins. I mean, you've had some legitimate wins. That's why I kind of say you remind me of Rarebit so much, because he's like this kind of, I wouldn't, you're a little more mild mannered than Rarebit because he's like a monster. But in a lot of ways, when you like go into the second half of that match, it's like all of a sudden, nobody can touch Trinity. That's it. She's the dragon. It's game over. We saw it with Fletch last month. Listen, you put Fletch down. I mean, you put him down rather quick. I mean, Fletch is obviously going through a lot of other problems right now, but I thought that was important to know. But I realize as we're coming up toward the last 20 or so minutes with you, and it's obviously been an honor to have you on. And I always ask this question to different wrestlers or different people in wrestling. What are your goals for the rest of the year in XCW?
To not die.
Well, that's okay. I mean, I don't want you to die, Trinity. I hope you don't die. I mean, that's kind of an interesting comment. I mean, tell me why.
I mean, all joking aside, I want to be able to just finish off the year kind of like in better spirits, and you know, I'm gonna be starting this new XCW Encounters journey with JJ, so that's gonna be interesting, to where I'm gonna be like sitting in a studio with him, kind of talking about these matches that are gonna be playing, you know, throughout the off season. So I'm wondering how that's going to be.
Well, what's that? What do you think that's going to be like compared to your other, experiences in XCW? That's a rather unique, again, another unique thing you're going to be a part of. I mean, is that an adjustment?
I would say it would be, because of the fact that, you know, to go from ring announcing to being a co-host, and mind you, JJ, he's been doing this kind of stuff for years. Like, he hosts XCW 5, but he's by himself and he has everything prepared. It's like nice and neat. But when you got two people and they have to kind of like play off each other, it could either lead to some really, really great like moments to build up to the matches when it cuts to the matches, or it's going to turn into a beautiful disaster. And I'm hoping for the first part.
I think it won't be as bad as you think. And it's funny you said that, because I actually have had on a lot of broadcasters that do different things on Sportswire. And some guys I've had on, I have a guy coming on here in a couple of weeks here in New York who has done some work on ESPN3 and some other places. And he would tell me sometimes by himself, it would actually be more difficult, and that he would want another person, because then you could kind of test things out. You could kind of maybe see, where you feed off each other. So I think it's going to be a great experience for. I think it's going to be another feather in your cap. And I have to ask then, was that something you've always wanted to do? Like, because I've always thought that you have a natural voice. I've always thought you've had a lot of the unique experiences, and it's very rare to have a female that does commentary at this level. I mean, is that something you've wanted to do, or what's your thoughts on that here as we move on here to closing thoughts in a minute?
Sorry, I had to get out of the car. The phone's about to die, so I'm charging it into a wall.
We're gonna get to closing thoughts right after this. Yep.
So I've done commentary stuff with JJ before. When I was managing Deacon Storm, I would normally get on the table and just, have it out with the boys.
Sure.
But when you're, and that's just an open environment where you're just, feeding off of the crowd, and you're feeding off of that energy. And it's not to say that I can't do it with JJ. I can do it with JJ. Like, we get along well enough that if the time comes, I think we would be able to hit it out of the park.
Well, listen, it takes time. It's a work in progress. I have a feeling everything you've done in XCW when it comes to ring introductions, wrestling, managerial stuff, editing, backstage, that you'll hit another one out of the park. I can't wait for that. We can obviously watch you on all great XCW platforms, including Facebook, where you can follow Trinity, also Trinity Parker. Go to Facebook, XCW Shelbyville on Facebook, also XCW_Shelbyville on Instagram, and XCW Shelbyville on YouTube, where you can watch all the great shows coming up. Obviously, Animosity took place this past week. You're going to see the next show coming up as well, and obviously Summer Mania WrestleMania 18 is going to be here. Save Yourself is this Thursday show, 6 o'clock Eastern time. Make sure you check it all out. I want to give you the floor now. I want to give you some closing thoughts. And it's certainly been a tremendous honor to have you, Trinity. And I really hope that you want to come back on Sportswire more often, talk about different things, and kind of helping us promote getting into Save Yourself, recapping where we are in XCW, and hopefully not no more XCW and go to EBW. Let's hope that we keep XCW the way it is, and we'll have to see if we can fight back against EBW. But I'm going to give you the floor now. I'm going to give you some closing thoughts. Anything else you want to plug, share, or say, Trinity? And it has been a tremendous honor, and the floor is yours.
Well, first of all, thank you, Reverend. I appreciate you letting me come on, despite the tight fit.
No, not at all. Not at all.
I would say go to XC Wrestling 1 with Facebook, and YouTube. That's XCW Shelbyville. But with YouTube, we're going to release the last episode of Series 2 of Sometime Later, where we talk about the first EBW iteration with Chris Jones. Ooh. And it's so big, I had to cut it into 2 parts.
Wow. Oh, well, you know what? I know, obviously, Mr. Jones had his own show on XCW TV for a while, and it recently ended. But now we're going to see where he was in the past to where he is now. And I would like to say this, certainly here on Sportswire, I hope I'm not going to open up a big keg of worms here. But one of the people that I would hope real soon that we might be speaking with, a little birdie might have told me this, is a guy you might have heard of named Chris Jones. So that's a little tease here on Sportswire very, very soon, whether it's going to be XCW 1, XCW Shelbyville, whatever it might be. EBW's Chris Jones very soon could be coming to Sportswire Radio. So I'm really excited, Trinity Parker, about some of this stuff here ahead, but especially Save Yourself 2023 this Thursday, coming up here 6 p.m. Eastern. I'm going to see more of this EBW, XCW Shelbyville. What happens with James Cerebral? What about Fletch? And you're going to be a part of it, literally right in that middle of that ring. So I can't wait for all of it. Trinity, it has been a tremendous honor. I want to thank you so much. Also, thank you for adding a women's perspective here to Sportswire from the wrestling side, because we don't get that too often. So I hope that we can have you here more often. Anytime you want to come on, please let us know. And I just, want to thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, and I would love to come back. Clearly, there's a lot more that could have been said, but I think for now, this will be a nice little palate cleaner for.
Listen, Fletcher said he wants to come back. I think a lot of guys, Mr. Parsley wants to come back. I mean, Mr. Law always wants to come back. I've had Laura on twice. I mean, ACT. So I think that we can definitely do something next month. Let's get our schedules, our ducks in a row next month when we have more time, and I definitely think we'll make that happen. So thank you so much, Trinity, for this opportunity. I can't wait to watch you coming up this Thursday, and more of those shows you're going to be a part of with JJ on XCW TV. And have a great day, and thank you for all you do, especially on behalf of women that have been out there and want to be an inspiration. You are definitely one of those inspirations and role models. Keep up the great work, and we'll talk with you soon.
Thank you, Reverend.
All right, and that was Trinity Parker, the ring announcer for XCW Shelbyville. You can follow XCW again on Facebook and YouTube at XCW Shelbyville, XCW Wrestling 1 on YouTube as well. My name is the Reverend Tom Bryson. I'll be back here again, 9 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow night with the ROW World Champion, the wild card, Jason Storm. If you're on sportnarium.com/player, you go back to your regularly scheduled programming. I want to say hello to somebody from California real quick, Skulls the Soul Hunter, who is via the Valley Wrestling Connection, also Wrestling Warzone, WCE. But thank you, everybody. Good night, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are, on the number one global radio station that is Sportswire Radio. This is your voice of all wrestling, the host of the Sports Report, the owner of Sportswire Radio, the number one global radio station, the Reverend